Before the United States existed, before anyone even uttered the word nation, this land was already full of life, power, and conflict. It was not an empty stage waiting to be conquered, but a continent inhabited by peoples who knew every river, every forest, and every season, and who believed that the land could not be owned, only respected. Then, from the horizon, ships arrived loaded with ambition. With them came an idea capable of changing the course of history, that everything could be claimed, divided, and dominated. That clash did not merely confront cultures, it unleashed a chain of violence, destruction, and transformation that would give rise to one of the most influential and contradictory countries the world has ever known. Here begins the history of the United States. In 1492, ships appeared on the horizon like ominous signs. They did not bring only ambitious men or foreign flags. They brought a completely different way of understanding the world. For Europeans, land could be owned, divided, exploited. For indigenous peoples, land was simply lived upon. The encounter was not a dialogue between cultures, but a violent and devastating clash. Along with iron, firearms, and horses, Europeans introduced something far more lethal: unfamiliar diseases. Within a few decades, entire communities disappeared without even understanding what was killing them. Spain, France, and England began to dispute territories that already had owners. In 1607, England founded Jamestown, the first permanent settlement. Far from a heroic story, it was a desperate struggle against hunger, disease, and constant failure. Many died, others endured. Without knowing it, they were setting in motion something that would change the course of the world. Over time, the colonies grew. Towns, ports, and cities emerged. Farmers, merchants, and artisans built hard but stable lives. Millions of enslaved Africans also arrived, forced to sustain the economy through their suffering. From London, the king ruled from afar, imposing taxes and laws without listening to those living on the other side of the ocean. For years, the colonists accepted that control, but something began to change. In pamphlets, taverns, and clandestine meetings, a revolutionary idea started to circulate. Power should not come from a king, but from the people. Enlightenment thinkers spoke of natural rights, individual liberty, and governments created to serve their citizens. When the crown attempted to crush those ideas with more taxes and more repression, it only strengthened them. The question was no longer whether there would be rebellion, but when. The revolution was neither glorious nor swift. It was a long, dirty, and desperate war. Poorly armed farmers faced the most powerful empire on the planet. What they lacked in military discipline, they made up for with conviction. They were fighting not for a king, but for an idea. George Washington understood that he did not need to win every battle, only to endure long enough. In 1776, while the war still raged, colonial leaders signed the Declaration of Independence. They asserted that all men were born with inalienable rights. It was a bold, incomplete, and contradictory claim, yet powerful enough to change history. Against all logic, the colonies won. And from the ruins of war, a new nation was born, the United States of America. The young nation grew rapidly. It drafted a constitution that sought to balance power and liberty, and began to expand westward with an almost religious conviction: manifest destiny. That advance came at the expense of indigenous peoples, who were displaced, deceived, or exterminated. Meanwhile, the country was dividing internally. In the north, factories and cities drove industrialization. In the south, the economy depended on slavery. The United States spoke of freedom while millions of people lived in chains. The tension increased year after year. It was a contradiction impossible to sustain. The young nation grew rapidly. It drafted a constitution that sought to balance power and liberty and began to expand westward with an almost religious conviction: manifest destiny. That advance came at the expense of indigenous peoples, who were displaced, deceived, or exterminated. Meanwhile, the country was dividing internally. In the north, factories and cities drove industrialization. In the south, the economy depended on slavery. The United States spoke of freedom while millions of people lived in chains. The tension increased year after year. It was a contradiction impossible to sustain. In just a few decades, the United States transformed into an industrial power. Steel, oil, and electricity fueled unprecedented growth. Cities like New York and Chicago rose toward the sky as millions of immigrants arrived hoping for a better life. Some became unimaginably wealthy. Others worked themselves to exhaustion for meager wages. Progress advanced, but not fairly. The American dream began to take shape, though not everyone could reach it. In 1929, the system collapsed. The Great Depression devastated banks, jobs, and hopes. Millions were left with nothing. The government intervened, redefining its role in citizens' lives. Soon after, the world was set ablaze once again. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States entered World War II. Its industry, its army, and its economic power were decisive in defeating fascism. But victory came at an enormous moral cost. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki marked the beginning of a new era, in which humanity discovered it could destroy itself. After World War II, the United States emerged not only victorious, but transformed. Its industrial strength, military reach, and economic influence positioned it as a global superpower. The world quickly divided into two opposing blocs, and the Cold War began. An era defined less by direct confrontation and more by constant tension, ideological rivalry, and the looming threat of nuclear annihilation. For decades, the fear of total destruction shaped politics, culture, and everyday life. Proxy wars erupted across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, while espionage and propaganda became essential tools of power. Intelligence agencies operated in the shadows, and the possibility of nuclear conflict hovered over each generation. The United States presented itself as a defender of freedom, even as it struggled to reconcile that image with its own internal realities. Within its borders, another battle unfolded, one no less decisive. Millions of African American citizens demanded rights that had long been denied: equal treatment under the law, access to education, the right to vote, and protection from violence. Through marches, boycotts, and acts of civil disobedience, they exposed the contradiction between the nation's democratic ideals and the lived experience of many of its people. Led by figures such as Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights movement forced the country to confront its past and reshape its laws. Progress was achieved, but not without resistance, sacrifice, and lasting scars. The struggle revealed that power alone did not define the nation. Its willingness to change did. On September 11, 2001, the United States experienced a moment of profound shock. The attacks shattered the sense of invulnerability that had defined the post-Cold War era. Terrorism reshaped national priorities, redefining foreign policy, military strategy, and the balance between security and personal freedom. Wars followed, alliances shifted, and surveillance became a central feature of modern life. At the same time, the 21st century accelerated technological change at an unprecedented pace. Digital networks transformed communication, work, and politics, bringing both opportunity and division. Economic inequality widened, public discourse grew more polarized, and trust in institutions weakened. The United States remained a global leader in innovation, culture, and influence. Yet internally, it wrestled with questions of identity, justice, and cohesion. Power persisted, but certainty did not. The nation moved forward not as a finished project, but as a society continually redefining itself. The United States is not just a country, it is an ongoing experiment. Built on powerful ideals and shaped by deep contradictions, its history is marked by ambition, conflict, progress, and failure. It is neither linear nor complete, yet its influence has helped define the modern world. As time continues to unfold, the question remains unresolved. Will the nation ever fully live up to the promise on which it was created?